At the beginning of each Sunday service, I say that part of what we do here at UUCF is draw wisdom from all the world's religions, balanced with the insights of modern science. You can see a visual display of this goal in the atrium if you look up. The 7 symbols hanging from those multicolored streamers represent both the major world religions, or some of them, such as Buddhism, paganism, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, as well as more modern scientific perspectives like atheism and humanism. In the center is a flaming chalice like we have here, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist living tradition. That two circles, one representing Unitarianism, one representing Universalism, that merge together, and then that flame at the center representing that continual search for truth and meaning in the present, not only in the past. And its placement in the center of all those religions in the atrium represents our openness from drawing from all of those traditions, both sacred and secular. So this morning I'd like us to reflect some on that dynamic. What does it mean to try and draw wisdom from all the world's religions, balanced with what we know here in the early 21st century? In what sense is Unitarian Universalism actually a religious movement? What is religion anyway? Is Buddhism a religion or a philosophy, and who gets to decide? As a point of comparison to what constitutes being a religion, let's begin by considering a group that's even more humanist and progressive than Unitarian Universalism. Yes, that is possible. The ethical cultural movement. Just as UUCF and other Unitarian Universalist congregations are affiliated with this larger network known as the Unitarian Universalist Association, ethical societies are member of a larger network called the American Ethical Union. So is ethical humanism a religious movement? Interestingly, it is. On one hand, the American Ethical Union describes itself as a non-theistic organization that is not concerned with either the existence or the non-existence of a deity. On the other hand, they are also clear that we are recognized as a religious movement because for us, the ethical quest has the depth of a religious commitment. And because we recognize the value of a community of support, celebration, and action. Similarly, one of the 8 commitments of ethical culture, which are parallel to our UU7 principles, states that life itself inspires a natural religious response. They say that although awareness of impending death intensifies the human quest, the mystery of life itself and the need to belong are the primary factors motivating a human religious response. Indeed, in the late 1950s, there were multiple court cases that ruled in favor of ethical societies being considered religious congregations for tax purposes, because they functioned in so many other ways like congregations that they could not be denied tax-exempt status that are afforded already to churches and synagogues and other religious communities. So it turns out that even according to the U.S. legal system, religion is a fairly elastic word. To say more about what is meant by words like religion and religious, let me share just a little bit about how my own interest in religion has evolved over the years. When I was in high school, I thought I wanted to be a physician when I grew up. Anybody else want to be a doctor and it didn't turn out that way? All right, a few others with me. My mother was a nurse, so I was around the hospital where she worked periodically as a child, and I was serious enough about entering the medical field that as a high school senior, I enrolled in a special course called Health Careers, which involved both classroom lectures, so basic tests on anatomy and physiology and medical terminology, as well as a rotating internship program in which we spent 9 months rotating 1 month each in 9 different departments of the hospital. So as an 18-year-old, I was able to spend many hours shadowing emergency room nurses, watching in the room, watching many different surgeries, being in the room for live births. So it was a remarkable program, and I loved it, and I thought that was what I was going to do with my life. I continued to be fascinated by biology, But as I was preparing for the preview days at a few of my top choices for college and reading about the many presentations that would be offered by various departments, and you couldn't go to all of them, so I had to see which ones do I want to attend, I was intrigued not only by those that were about pre-med, but also by the descriptions of the philosophy departments and the religion departments. Here's one. Religion majors learn how to clearly describe, critically analyze, and empathetically understand the religious traditions that inform the most deeply held perspectives of people past and present. With that foundation, our students are empowered to ask informed, incisive, and provocative questions about the social, moral, and personal implications of those viewpoints, as well as their own religious perspectives. Now, if that sounds like a fun way to spend 4 years, being a religion major might be right for you. For me, I love this prospect of immersing myself in the big questions, of investigating how the best thinkers throughout the ages have pondered various possible responses to those big questions, and considering how religious rituals and how experiences with the holy, with the sacred, with the divine have impacted and shaped the lives of religions and groups and cultures in different ways throughout history and today. And in the end, I became a double major in religion and philosophy. Now here's the twist. Initially, I took those words like religion and religious studies at fairly face value. I just assumed they were fairly neutral words. But as I began to learn more, it turns out they actually have a fairly complicated and contested history. It turns out that umbrella terms like the world's religions emerged out of 19th century European colonialism, and that neither Japan nor India have terms in their native languages that have any sort of parallel to what we mean by that European-based word, religion. I began to learn about the divide in many academic disciplines between what are sometimes called lumpers and splitters. Lumpers tend to emphasize commonalities. For example, all these diverse groups, ethical humanists, Christian, Buddhist, they all have commonalities. Let's lump them all together and call them religion. Splitters, as you can likely guess, want to say, actually, this one's kind of different, and they don't go together, and one of these isn't like the others. So here's an example of what a splitter might point out. Long before the arrival of European colonialists, there were diverse groups around the Indus River in modern-day India, who shared fairly common and overlapping worldviews about some shared obligations that affect all aspects of a almost endless cycle of births and rebirths. But it was 19th century British colonialists who lumped all those diverse groups about the Indus River together and said, oh, that must be Hinduism. And the closer you look, the more differences you can begin to see between those duties and obligations, what in Sanskrit is called Santana Dharma, the differences between that and what Europeans call religion. Similarly, many English translations of the Christian scriptures include translations of that word religion. But the closer you look, the more anachronistic it begins to seem, since the Christian New Testament was written in a version of the Greek language that predated Latin precursors to our modern term religion. Those Greek words like eusebia and threskia, sometimes translated as religion, are much closer to the Sanskrit dharma, the Chinese li, the Latin pietas. All words having something to do with the quality one is thought to possess as a result of properly fulfilling sets of social obligations and expectations and ritual procedures. Those distinctions are lost in translation today for all those who think that religion is either about an inner emotional experiences or believing 20 impossible things before breakfast about things that allegedly happened, centuries ago. Now, I apologize if that last minute or so felt like plunging too far into the deep end of religion nerd territory. Stay with me. But I wanted to risk a little bit of nuance because although there's a lot of truth in what I say each week, and will likely continue to say, that we seek to draw wisdom from all the world's religions, balanced with the insights of modern science. So I'll continue to say that. But there is a caveat that the closer you look into what we mean by that term, the world's religions, the more the details start to matter and the more differences you start to see. There's a reason that scientists don't limit themselves to generic terms like water, because they talk instead precisely about things like H2O. That term water could have a lot of foreign substances mixed in. That chemical formula, H2O, clarifies that what is being referred to is precisely a molecule containing one atom of oxygen and 2 hydrogen atoms that are connected by covalent bonds. Or whereas I might look into a telescope and say, look at that amazing hole on the moon, a scientist is going to say, well, actually that's a crater. Or consider this wooden structure that I'm standing behind. Is it a lectern or is it a pulpit? These different terms carry with them a whole world of assumptions and connotations, and whether we call something water or H2O, a hole or a crater, religion or Santana Dharma, it actually shapes the function of it, and it shapes how we relate to it. So on one hand, yes, Unitarian Universalism is a religious movement that is interested in drawing wisdom from all the world's religions, balanced with the insights of modern science. On the other hand, things start to look differently. If you stick around here for a while, perhaps take the risk of exploring in greater depths one or more of those religious paths. And suddenly, as you begin to move from secondhand religion, what other people have told you is the case or what you've read about in a book, as you move from that to what we may be called firsthand religion, what you've experienced existentially for yourself, you may begin to see that some of those distinctions and differences that were previously invisible to you began to emerge. As Morpheus told Neo in The Matrix, you take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in bed and you believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill and you stay in Wonderland and you see just how deep the rabbit hole goes. The choice is yours. For now, I want to invite you to hear just a little bit more about the insights that can be gained about reflecting on what is this thing called religion, or this thing called religions, when we look at it from a kind of a 30,000-foot perspective. If you look up the word religion in the HarperCollins Dictionary of Religion, you'll see a note that defining religion is often held to be difficult. Thank you. Thank you very much, HarperCollins. And introductions to the study of religion routinely list long, many different definitions of religion as a way of showing this to be the case. To be fair, this dilemma is not unique to religion. From a historical and a cross-cultural perspective, it's impossible to give a simple definition about what is music, what is art. And these are really complex and contested things. To give you just a short sample of the many definitions of religion, a more traditional definition is culturally patterned interactions with culturally postulated superhuman beings. A more generic definition is an experience of the holy, so meaning that which is set apart from the ordinary and the mundane. A definition that focuses more on experience is the mysterium tremendum et fascinans, meaning that mystery which is awe-inspiring and terrifying, yet somehow fascinating. That mystery that is compelling, yet repelling. Some people use the metaphor of fire, that religion can be like playing with fire. It can be fascinating, and you can also get burned. You can also burn other people. That's a whole other story, right? One of my favorites is that religion challenges us to get in touch with our ultimate concerns, those deepest and highest values. From a more skeptical perspective, religion has been defined as an illness by Freud, as a narcotic by Marx, as a weakness by Nietzsche, and as a projection by Feuerbach. Feuerbach said, it was in the 19th century, he said, we're all grown up now today. Can we not just see that what we used to need to say, project our unconscious and say that, we should all love each other because God is love, therefore we should love. He says, can't we just realize that we're just projecting that onto the universe? And if we used to say God is love, you just flip that and say love should be our God, that love should be our highest and most important calling. That's what Feuerbach meant by projection. Looking deeper into the word religion itself, the most popular etymology, because it's kind of fun, is that it derives from the Latin root religere, that relates to our our modern word ligament, such that religion means to bind together, religere, like a ligament. And I appreciate the ways that definition points to a way that religious institutions and religious practices can help bind us together internally, can help bind us together as a community, especially when we're feeling broken. The case has also been made that the proper etymology of the word religion is actually instead the Latin root religere, which means to be careful or to be mindful, in the sense of I read the morning newspaper religiously, in doing that kind of ritual sense. There's a strong argument that that latter sense of the word religion is probably a more accurate one because it captures the preponderance of what religion was, so to speak, in the ancient world. It tended to be about this careful performance of ritual obligation, whereas the modern Western sense of the word religion can often be intellectual assent to certain ideas or this inner sentiment. So the deeper you look into that word religion, or really into any word that's important and has been around for a while, the more complexity you will find, the more drastic changes you will see in how that same word is used very differently in different times and different contexts. So for better or worse, there actually is no final definitive answer to the question, what is religion? What is religious? What is music? What is art? Who am I? But regarding which of the many definitions we might choose at any various time or place, there's an underlying question that I've learned to ask, and that is, who benefits? Are ethical societies a religion for tax purposes? Is smoking peyote constitutionally protected in the First Amendment as a free exercise of religion? How about polygamy? Should it be constitutionally protected on the same grounds? These are hard questions taken in isolation, but I encourage you to look underneath the surface of those questions and ask the even deeper questions beneath the surface. If we define and categorize religion one way, who benefits? And what about if we define and categorize it differently? Which way brings people together? Which way drives them apart? Which way empowers historically oppressed groups? And which way solidifies and strengthens an unfair status quo? Indeed, when European Christians first coined that generic term religion, they actually didn't intend it generically and generously. Instead, they saw only themselves as religious because everyone else, of course, was superstitious and heathens and sinners. So when reflecting on those categories and definitions, remember those questions. Who benefits and who decides? Here at UCF, we are a big tent with, that makes space for many different religious paths to cross, to collaborate, to coexist. And even if defining religion is an elusive task, there are many ways that this and other religious communities can support us and challenge us to rise to greater challenges and heights than we often would alone. In times such as these that are in many ways troubling and disturbing, religious communities remind us that we don't have to find our way alone. In the theologically conservative religion of my childhood, I was taught to work out my salvation with fear and with trembling. But through studying and experiencing the world's religions, as well as modern scientific perspectives like atheism and humanism, I have found a different way forward. Instead of working out my individual salvation with fear and trembling, I seek to work out our salvation right here and now in this world. And I seek to do it not with fear and trembling, but with hope and with trust. And I'm grateful to be on that religious journey with all of you. In that spirit, I invite you to rise and embody your spirit. Let's sing together hymn 193, Our Faith is But a Single Gem. Nick will play through it once.